up, not arrest them and put them in the back seat, drive them to the latest relocation center, and then ship them all over the United States with their diseases. And the government is simply thumbing their nose at us. If anybody needed any convincing that this government isn't going to change, then that's it, in my opinion. You could pick NSA spying. It doesn't matter what they say about reform. It's not going to stop. It didn't stop years ago when they told us they were shutting down the total awareness system. I mean, we literally have lost the Constitution and the country. They just haven't started locking up most people yet. They don't have a sufficient crisis to do that. And I don't think any of these smaller crises are going to lead to that. I still believe, going to the big picture, that they're waiting for a major world war to justify the total crackdown on dissidents, of which this whole NSA system is really all about, building lists of dissidents, red, blue lists, you name it. They probably got a dozen different lists that we're probably on, Alex. But the point that I've tried to make in strategic relocation is that, you know, people keep wringing their hands and saying, you know, this is really terrible. But they keep being driven by these false hopes. The false hope that a Rand Paul is going to change something, or that a new Republican president is going to suddenly turn this around if we just get Obama.
They would just blame the collapse on him or shoot him in the head.
That's right. Now, I don't think they're ever going to let even someone like Rand Paul, who has got some compromising problems, into the presidency. I think it's going to be a very controlled Republican. And
well, that's because they've been tapping his phone for years. They know he's just like his dad.
Well, there are some differences. I mean, he isn't as strong as his dad is on certain things.
No, I agree. He will compromise in politics a little bit, but I've known him since about 1995, and the papers have written about this and said, we know he's really like his dad. I'm saying he is a good man. He is a moral man. That's why they don't like him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even someone like Mitt Romney was bending over backwards to please the establishment, saying, let me into the presidency, and taking on every CFR advisor. They wouldn't let him in because he was a moral man and they didn't have dirt on him. I mean, that's how important it is for them to have somebody absolutely controllable in the White House. And anybody who thinks that Obama's sitting there at his desk making these decisions is fooling themselves. He takes orders, just like James Jones said at the Munich Security Conference. We take our daily marching orders at the National Security Council from Henry Kissinger and Associates. Not suggestions, daily marching.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. That was like a year ago or so. We should pull that back up.
Alex, 2009.
Well, time just warps past us. So 5 years, 5 years ago, I just can't believe it. It's just time is moving so fast that we take our orders from Henry Kissinger when he was heading up the National Security Council. It just shows how brazen they are. And like you said, now the evil is just out in the open. What is the point of that? Just to set the precedent and flaunt it?
Yes, they do have a lot of that. I mean, look at the CFR website, still has that James Jones quote, and his entire speech admitting to this conspiracy that Henry Kissinger controls daily the national. They still have it up on their website. I mean, that's as in the face as you get, and it's also very telling because not a single news media source has ever published or even commented on that. So they're very arrogant about the level of the control. What I was saying, though, Alex, is that people have to realize that even though we have to keep fighting, even though we have to keep waking up the remnant, we have to prepare for resistance, people have to survive what's coming. They have to survive the war they're planning to bring upon us, which is going to make 9/11 look like a picnic.
No, you're right. And you were saying that years ago, and now my brain is completely shifting into the understanding that this just all, we are in the hands of pure evil, and it's just going to get worse. God help us. I mean, we can try to get America to wake up and repent. We can try to change things, but we're in the hands of absolutely evil people who want to wreck everything.
And so people have to be prepared. I mean, they've got to, you know, a lot of people, and I do a lot of consultation about strategic relocation, and people say, well, I just can't leave right now. And I understand that. The worst thing people can do is get out in the boondocks without any financial lifeline and try to survive because self-sufficiency is expensive. But they have to look up to reality. It's not a matter of if you're going to have to get out of the big cities. It's a matter of when. So you have to take a certain amount of your resources.
That's right. We're going to go to break, Joel. Come back with that. It's like Matt Drudge said earlier this year or last year. I forget. Might have been 5 years ago. Who knows? He said everybody should have an exit plan now. Just how much of this has come true. And under the North American Union, it basically says in the treaty they'll get rid of the borders with Mexico and Canada that Bush did up with Vicente Fox in 2005. But just like Matt Drudge tweeted, and we'll put that up on screen here in a moment, that everybody should have an exit plan back in January of this year, January 28th, he said have an exit plan. Matt Drudge, at Matt Drudge, or at Drudge is actually how you get there on Twitter. The media attacked him for that. While governments all have exit plans, bodyguards, bunkers, weapons, food, we're not supposed to have backup generators. In fact, that's in the news all the time, demonizing people that want to be prepared. No, just be a slob, be on welfare, don't care about anything, whatever, it's fine. Joel Skousen's our guest. I want to talk more about preparedness, and I want to look at things geopolitically, but why would a Anglo-American elite want to have a dumbed-down, servile population? I guess so they'd be pliable. It's just that I look at all the things they're doing. What do you think the big strategic plan on 17% of the 60-plus thousand, kids, or only 17% of the kids that have poured in and the adults that have poured in the last year? My concern is that it's meant to get an even bigger wave to come in out of Central and South America and use that crisis to bring in the next level of control. What do you think the big picture is about, Joel Skousen, on the border?
Well, ultimately, it is about watering down the politics of the United States, watering down conservative values, and also there clearly is going to be more and more draconian federal powers allocated to the government to supposedly take care of this border crisis, which the Obama administration has actually created. It's interesting that Border Patrol says that the amount or percentage of Mexicans coming across the border is tapered as compared to Central Americans. And believe me, Central America is a cauldron of crime now. Guatemala and Honduras are incredibly unsafe now. Americans just aren't safe. A lot of kidnapping, a lot of execution of businessmen in their cars as they drive to work. This is, forget about relocation to Central America. Even Costa Rica now is not going to be exempt over time. The old expat, live cheap, live safe in Latin America is going to be a thing of the past here within the next 5 years. So, but ultimately, I think it's a combination of things that will add up. Not that the border crisis will create complete social unrest. It won't by itself. It certainly is going to continue to overwhelm the system. And it's purposeful, Alex, when in the Obamacare system, they open the doors to illegals. The TSA opens and doesn't put any requirements on them to need any identification to travel around the country. And now they're enlisting churches around the country in order to take these poor little orphans in. I mean, the problem is we need to seal that border, and nobody's talking about that. We can't do any of that with Obama in office. He obviously won't do it, but we couldn't do it when Bush was in office. That's when Congress authorized the money, and Bush refused to finish the fence. And what the administration did was increase the parameters of the fence to be so expensive and costly that they simply complained that they didn't have the money to do it. For less than $1 billion, you could put a double strand of 10-foot-high fence with concertina wire on it, and believe me, that's going to slow things down to a crawl that you can manage. But they won't do that. They want to spend $2 billion this year and $3 billion next year on humanitarian crisis that's going to continue to fester. So I think what's happening is that you take this into consideration with land use planning, putting everybody into high-density urban areas, making people more dependent on EBT cards through a continued bailout through unemployment compensation and food stamps. And what have you got? You've got a people totally dependent on the government. And as you carefully pointed out, they're preparing to get out of the cities. They have homes with bunkers underneath them. They have their escape plans. FEMA doesn't tell anything about fallout shelters. That's laughed upon by the media. even though that's the one thing that the elite know that they're going to need someday, because they know this nuclear war is coming on America. At least it's coming to the American military. I don't think Russia and China are going to strike American cities. They don't want to be viewed as the bullies of the world. They're taking down the bully of the world and striking the U.S. military. So I think people can survive what's coming, but they really have to prepare. And the government doesn't want people prepared. They want as much chaos when the major strike.
I agree with you, Joel Skousen. Stay there. We're going to come back, get to a bunch of other news, and take calls. Stay with us. We got callers from before earlier. We'll see who wants to talk to Joel. I'm sure most of them do.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run.